It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, it's the Real Estate Breakfast, bringing you the latest update on the Australian housing property market. Available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, from Penrith to Perth and from Adelaide to Darwin. Remember too, we are not a real estate company pushing property listings. Instead, we are independent media, and you get the most relevant up-to-date property info from Australia's leading property experts. Yes, it's a Tuesday, July the 21st. Did you find the FIFA World Cup final yesterday boring or spectacular? Spain literally hypnotised their way to World Cup supremacy. They certainly orchestrated a relentless passing maze. I don't think I've seen so many phases of that, passing the ball so many times that Argentina's defenders were left chasing the ball constantly, and then that lone extra time strike finally shattered the deadlock. And possession football, doesn't that still reign supreme? Might not have looked pretty to watch, but man oh man, was that effective yesterday. Now, real estate and affordable housing. There are these affordable housing projects that are being offered around Australia that seem to be somewhat misleading for people. And the ABC, they ran a story on this, including Sarah, who moved into what was promoted as affordable housing with the understanding that her rent would be set at just 30% of her income. But months later, that all unfortunately changed. Her rent was then recalculated using a market-based formula, increasing by almost $100 a week and putting her right back into rental stress. You know, one step forward, 5 steps back, not to mention the roller coaster of being happy at finding affordable housing to then find herself right back to where she started from.
It's gone up by almost $100 a week. It's definitely going to put me in rent stress again, and I think I'd probably have to look at other private rentals that are cheaper because this isn't affordable anymore. It felt too good to be true, but there was these people that were saying it is, and you just pay 30%, and here it is written down, and that's all we're asking from you. And I just said, great, okay, this is amazing, let's do it. It really frustrates me. People say, oh, it's not black and white, but like, this is black and white.
So some Australians who appear to be exactly the type of people affordable housing is designed for are being rejected because of strict eligibility rules. In fact, some developments with affordable apartments have even sat vacant while suitable applicants have missed out. So is the affordable housing system working as intended, or has it become too complicated to deliver on its original purpose? Let us know if you have found your situation similar to Sarah. Our email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Now, we've talked about first home buyers who have moved out of larger city areas into more regional ones. And Josh, who we spoke to a while ago, is worth highlighting his story again because he decided to move from Melbourne to Geelong. And he did this towards the end of 2024. And yes, Geelong has moved along like every other area around Australia on price point. So let's catch up on this story as we drop in on this conversation that is so topical right now.
Being an architect myself, I, obviously am pretty passionate about design. A lot of my own personal clients are, $15 million 2-rack homes. And realistically, I wasn't able to achieve the same home at this sort of first home buyer stage. And so I sort of started to look at areas that I could afford in Melbourne that were going to fit my budget, but still gave me, say, for example, a little bit of land, which is something that I really value, gardening and growing veggies. Any area that seemed affordable to me in the surrounding Melbourne areas just had no lifestyle. I just, saw a little bit more for myself. So I started casting out my net a little bit wider and started looking down Geelong way. Initially, I drove down. I sort of was like, I don't really think it's for me. And then started looking on realestate.com and started finding properties that really caught my attention, 80s homes, 70s homes, like that real mid-century modern style, which is definitely my favorite. And then just started seeing properties. I was like, this is doable. So I went to a few auctions and obviously missed out. Property prices were rising a lot at that time, just sort of early COVID days. And then I ended up finding a property that just ticked every box. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to make this a bit of a decision. Didn't really know anything about the area. It was during COVID, so I actually only ever visited the home once. It was a 5-bed house, had a huge block of land and needed a lot of work, which was something that I was pretty excited about. Moved down. So bought the house, 2 months later, settled, moved in and didn't know the beauty of what the area actually was going to hold. It turns out that I'm 10 minutes to wineries on the Bellarine Peninsula. I'm 10 minutes to Ocean Grove beaches and Barwon Heads. I'm 10 minutes to the centre of Geelong. I'm 10 minutes to the other side. So it really ended up being not only an incredible investment opportunity for property prices for what I could get for my money, but it ended up being an incredible lifestyle change. I guess was a little bit of a fluke, but it's been one of the best things I've ever experienced.
You're talking at the time of COVID, and the property prices, of course, have moved on since then. So it has no doubt ended up being a fantastic investment for you. Little bit of blind faith moving out of Melbourne. As you say, you didn't fully appreciate what the area had. You said that you got a little bit of land with us. So how big is the property in terms of land size?
So the land size is about 800 square, which, it's definitely larger than, say, the new developments being built at the moment. But I think the actual orientation of the block, it's at the end of a cul-de-sac. So it's this very long kind of kite-shaped block with quite a long house on it. So it really then lends itself to incredible opportunities gardening-wise. I've probably got about 7 outdoor areas that I've kind of zoned off into different areas.
So you like doing the gardening. You got the veggie patch in by the sound of it. It sounds like you want to be a little bit self-sufficient.
Yeah. But my friends call me the Noni Hazelhurst of the Bellarine from Better Homes and Gardens, which was like an Australian show we all grew up with. But yeah, I love being self-sufficient. I love being able to just grow my own veggies. And it's sort of the simple life without owning a property. I'm still a single guy. So I feel like that's a big responsibility for one person. So it kind of gives me the best of both worlds.
Your friends, other people around your same age, people that haven't managed to get into their first property, it's becoming later and later, well into people's 30s, start of their 40s even, to buy their first property, which for my generation just wasn't a thing. We were getting into property in our 20s. I can't imagine sort of getting in at a later age. So you no doubt have other friends that are struggling.
Oh, for sure. I think even for myself, I was always in apartments, obviously living in Melbourne, and I was craving land, so I could actually start doing these hobbies that I always had watched on YouTube and whatnot. And I've got a lot of other friends who are in the same boat. And unfortunately, if they're not willing to sacrifice on the sort of city lifestyle that they require, then they are having to buy apartments. So, they're late 30s and they're only being able to buy their first 1-bedroom apartment or 2-bedroom apartment, wanting to have a couple of kids in there or now being pregnant, and then they're sort of having to sell pretty quickly to then buy something a little bit bigger, or they end up selling their apartment and then just going to have to rent a home of a decent size for them and their young family.
Yeah, that's very, very tough. If you don't have your home in place and secure, you end up having children and you are renting. You are really on the back foot, and particularly in this economy where everything is just so expensive.
Why pay a premium for advertising that's too expensive? Our listeners are actively engaged in the real estate market. Get your message directly into the ears that can influence your business.
Look, I think the way that agents now are pushing homes, yes, they're doing stories and reels. The videos that they're capturing are caught in the moment. They are purposefully meant to be lo-fi.
I started selling on the 1st of January, all my properties this year, by the open platform, which has made a huge difference, and the buyers have loved it because it gives them full transparency.
We very much believe that. We We are pretty competitively priced compared to Sydney. A lot of buyers, look, I'm selling probably 75 to 80% of our buyers are from the Sydney metro area.
From powerful and up-to-date news to professional real estate experts with the latest property trends.
I do want to ask you this, which is something we've talked about a number of times, which has been reported in various places, and that is millennials wanting to have the same lifestyle as their parents for their first home. They just want to sort of jump ahead of the queue. Is that a thing? Is that something that you've sort of experienced with people that you know?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's it's not an ego thing, or I think it's actually just the desire to have a home that you live in and it's yours. I mean, I know for myself, you almost move every year when you're renting because you're having to move to a different area, or rent gets too expensive, you have to go to another area, or you're sick of housemates, or, so I think there's almost that unsettling feeling that you have. So I guess that's where the craving comes for your own home. But then with that, obviously, we look at our parents and go, oh, you had a beautiful 4-bedroom home with 2 bathrooms and a big backyard. And then you compare to what we would now get, which is a 1-bed apartment for the, 10 times more price.
And in terms of percentage with your friends, with the mum and dad bank, what do you think that sort of comes out at with assistance from parents?
I think most of my friends have been able to do it on their own, which has been, something to be really proud of. I know they've worked hard and saved for years to be able to do that. I think most parents would be there to help if they needed to.
And you said that you're an architect. So how long did it take you to save up for your deposit?
So I seriously started saving when just before I turned 30. I had a bit of a goal, like by 30, I wanted to have my own place. And then that was obviously with a partner. We obviously broke up. And then I thought, well, no, I don't want to be tied to someone else in this huge investment. I'd rather do it myself. So I think it then took me another year, a lot of sacrifice. I mean, I think that's the main thing our generation really has to realize is if you want something, you've got to really cut back on your everyday spendings and do side hustles. And, I was working full time and was doing a side hustle business as well.
Do you find that people similar to you, they might have had a relationship and they come out of the relationship and they say, well, hang on, what am I doing here? Is this a little bit dangerous going into property with somebody I'm not married to, where I've got to, if something goes wrong, I've got to split 50% of the property? Is that a consideration, do you think, in today's times that we live in?
I think it's naively, probably not, but I do know friends that are now in that situation and they're still having to live with their ex-partner a year on because they have no other option of getting out of their mortgage and their home they're in. Even 2 years, 3 years on, they're still having to live together because they can't afford to get out, because then they both can't afford to have anything themselves, separately. So I think it's something to definitely consider. But at the same time, to service a mortgage on your own is really, can be quite stressful.
Yes, being trapped into that sort of relationship housing arrangement, that is affecting thousands and thousands of couples up and down Australia. And no doubt that is, I guess, very much an anxiety trigger point. Now, you mentioned that you are an architect. You're doing some work for the super rich. Do you call them super rich in Toorak? I suppose so. Designing some of these mansions.
Yeah, I mean, I just call them friends, but it's been I've obviously got a really diverse portfolio range of clients, but it's been really fascinating to deal with super wealthy, where they're doing $15 million builds or $2 million renovation, down to clients that are, it's their first home and they've got $100,000 to renovate, their sort of, I guess, idealistically dream home. It's a very interesting audience to sort of deal with. I think what's more fascinating is the clients in Toorak that are my clients are all started just with nothing. They didn't have help. They bought a house in a really backward area, property increased, maybe 10%. They were able to do a little renovation on it. They then sold it. Then they bought the next one, the next one, the next one. So they've kind of worked their way up to these big homes. And that, I guess, being surrounded by that has definitely encouraged me as well.
Well, good luck with all of that, Josh, and thank you so much for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.